Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Gardening is a great way to reach and teach kids life lessons like responsibility and consequences. Also, you want to make sure you don't get hurt in the garden. Today we're going to talk about garden safety. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Dr. Kelly. Dr. Kelly is a retired professor of horticulture, and Mr. D is here. Thanks for joining us. All right, this is going to be fun, Dr. Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
But guess what? School is about to start up again, right?
Yep.
Pretty soon.
Not long.
I understand you have some back-to-school projects.
Yeah. I do a lot of programs with agents, like 4-H agents, and we do a lot of different things and do school programs and work with teachers to have ideas for things to do. And it's becoming so important that we engage our young people into nature. And I was showing you in this week's Time magazine, there is an article about how it has now been scientifically proven that the time we spend in nature has therapeutic value. It lowers blood pressure, it makes us feel better, lowers anxiety and depression levels. So there's a lot of really good reason to engage kids in outdoor activities early on. And to do it through school or at home, you know, either way is great. But I have some things here that I want to share with you that I have done in the past with kids. And one of the fun things that we have done is to show children how to press flowers or press leaves or press anything that will go flat between absorbent pieces of newspaper. And a lot of people use like big encyclopedias or big phone books or things like that. And here I've got Queen Anne's lace, and you can see it's pretty flat. Now that's been in there a while, and you put it between pieces of newspaper and then put that in like a big book. Or you can do something small like this. This is just a little plant press that I made. You see it's got my name on it, so nobody messes with my plant press. And you connect it with like a rubber band to go around it. And again, it's got so I think I do it this way. It's got the pieces of newsprint in between the pages, and I just did this little petunia yesterday. Ooh. And now typically you would not be looking at this and messing with it until it got good and dry, and then you can pick it up and then do fun things with it. You can make a collection, like a lot of students have to do a flower, wildflower collection or a leaf collection. So you could do that. That's a school project that's required for some high school students, you know, to do that. Or you could do a really nice, and these are my 4-leaf clovers. Since I'm Irish, I'm really lucky. I can really find 4-leaf clovers. So I press them and then I frame them. And this is my goal. Or you can get more elaborate and do something like this.
That is nice.
Really artistic, you know, and kids are great at this. And you just attach the dried plant material with Elmer's glue. And then, you know, put it in a picture frame.
Something easy to do for the kids.
Yeah, something fun, and get some outside, get some collecting things. And this is a bookmark that's made. That's the Queen Anne's lace that I showed you. And this is really fun and easy for kids to do because this is just cardstock. And then you cut it the exact dimension of just old plain clear packing tape. And the kids don't have to cut it, you know. They just put this thing on there, zip that over there, and then they get a hole punch and stick them some yarn or something, you know. So, and here's another one. So, all kind of fun stuff. And that, yep. So that's the using, and you can go out with the kids and collect all kind of fun things in the fall with kids. We do scavenger hunts. We give them a list. You know, get something stinky, get something sticky, get something fuzzy.
All kind of good stuff.
Yeah, and I got to show you this because it's got our Mississippi State stuff on it, right? So this is like a list of some of the scavenger hunt things that we do. something that smells good, something that's got a leaf insect or disease damage, something to get the kids out and getting fun things to do. So
That's good stuff.
yeah.
Now tell us what else you have on the table.
Well, yeah, this is another good thing
let's talk
here.
about that
This is, let's look at this. This is the good. First, I want to show you this. Now, you know, a lot of people like getting newspaper and they just throw it away or use it to start fires. Well, you can make your own little propagation seed cups. And you just shred up. This is just newspaper, shred it up and put in a bucket or something and get it really good and wet. And then you get your cup about this size right here. You pack all that in there, you know, pack it around, and then just set it up somewhere to dry. And then while it's drying, you can poke a hole through the bottom for drainage, but you don't have to because it's, you know, it's going to lose water from the sides anyway.
Okay.
So that's a fun project for kids. They get to get wet, they get to get messy, which is good for kids.
Yeah, kids like that.
Yeah, they
Sure
do.
they do.
And then this is something that we have done with the kids too. This is a wildflower seed ball.
I like that.
And all you do is get wildflower seed, or you could just use zinnia or just any kind of flower seed.
Okay.
And what you do is you get them out, you just get some old clay from some place that's not any good in the garden, you know, so you get your clay soil, and then you get them to put the seed all in a bucket, and they get to get in the mud and get it all like this.
And getting dirty
And
and
get
nasty,
dirty,
right?
yeah, and then they wipe their face. Anyway, and then they put them in little balls and set them up and get them hard, and then in the fall, when you sow your wildflowers, like in October, you know, they just go out, take them home, or part of the school garden, throw them out in the edge of the lawn or something where they can, as the winter rains come, and you know, they beat on the soil and spread the seed around like nature. It's kind of like you're mimicking nature. Now, some of the kids get really creative, you know, and make little faces, like this is a sweet gum ball, and this child did, I think that's some kind of sea creature. And this is an old eaten up pine cone.
bass.
Yeah, that's a largemouth bass. Yeah, see that mouth? Yeah, he's saying, "Go dogs, go Mississippi
There you
State,"
go.
right?
That's good stuff, though,
Yeah,
Dr. Kelly.
yeah.
It is.
And then you want to show these if we
let's do
got
that.
time?
We do.
Okay, this is all to encourage. You know how you said responsibility and leadership skills? Well, this kind of gives them some responsibility. These are little plant head or plant creatures that you can make, and they're made from a knee-high hose. Now, you fellas probably don't know what that is.
I don't have a clue.
But it just goes up to your knee, and it's just a hose. This one's white. This was maybe a nurse. This was a nurse's or something, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, this is just you pack soil and you put rye seed, like ryegrass or creeping red fescue or some small kind of seeded grass right in the bottom or the toe of the stocking.
Okay.
And then the kids, of course, decorate it. This one, she's got some ear bobs.
How about that?
Yeah, ear bobs.
Ear bobs, okay, not
Ear
earrings,
bobs.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're too young to know about ear bobs. And then they put the little eyes, little googly eyes, and then the child has to take care of their plant. And you put it, this is the wick that brings the moisture up, you know, and then it'll germinate. And obviously this child did not take care of Hazel here.
Oh, Hazel.
She succumbed, I guess the way you say it. But anyway, you can do a caterpillar like this. This is, again, it's just the knee-high hose that is segmented. You know, you'll put and then the seed is distributed throughout the soil.
Okay.
This one, you just put it in the toe because you don't want hair growing on Hazel's face.
Okay.
You know, the grass coming out her face. But on the caterpillar, it's just interspersed. You mix it with the soil first, and then just put it in the stocking and then tie a knot in the hose. These are just knots in here in the hose. And then, of course, the child has decorated the face. And that's just cute as it can be, yeah. And then the little tail, and then the grass comes up. And I have seen them trim their, they'll cut their grass. And you know, this one, I had even one child that let it really grow long, and then she platted it.
How about that?
Yeah, it's pretty cute, yeah. So, and that teaches them some responsibility and, you know, and the needs of a plant. You know, they need light, they need water, you know, those kind of things.
All right, well, Dr. Kelly, that's some fun stuff. I need the teachers to really enjoy that. Hardiness.
Hardiness.
Always a good
Well, that's what we are, right? We're pretty hardy, yeah.
Pretty hardy.
But when you think about plants and you use the term hardiness, what you're referring to typically is cold hardiness. You know, the hardiness of that plant to cold temperatures. And our plant zones, our USDA plant zones, are based on that cold hardiness. You know, for we're in what? What are we here in Memphis? We're zone 7.
Yeah,
Aren't we
7.
7? So that's what.
Some would say 7B.
Yeah. So
depending
that
on where
means
you
we
are.
could only grow plants that were hard, supposedly. That were only hardy from 0 to 10 degrees. That's as low as they could take. That single digits in there is all they would stand. And you know we're always pushing the limit on that. You know, so that's what it is. It's the hardness of the plant to withstand cold temperatures. And as you know, we can grow things down here, they can't grow up north. Well, you know, obviously because we have warmer winters. And then if you think about another hardiness, you know, there's another zone map that is a heat zone map. And I know you're familiar with that, Chris, but it's based on, basically it's the United States rated on how many days above 86 degrees does that region have. And I think Jackson, Mississippi has like 4 months.
Memphis is not too far behind.
No, and you go up to Seattle and they have maybe 2 weeks. You know, so, and it's mainly, that kind of hardiness mainly has an impact on our herbaceous plants.
Right.
You know, that like hostas and things like that really just do wonderfully well in Seattle, Washington, and get nearly as big as half this table. And down here, the heat, they struggle. You know, they really just don't. So that's a heat hardiness.
All right, Mr. D, let's talk a little bit about garden safety. So what do you want to start with that?
Well, you know, it's hot out there.
It is
right
hot.
now. But first, let me say that, you know, gardening is one of America's favorite pastimes. It's a good physical activity for you to get involved in. Hunting season's closed. It's too hot to fish. so getting out there in the garden this time of the year is a good thing. It'd be good to spend an hour or 2 a day out there. Everybody would be healthier. You wouldn't have to go to a sauna. You know, you save your sauna bill.
Right.
But seriously, out there right now, it's important that you protect yourself. And, you know, I work out in the sun every day. I wear a long sleeve shirt. I wear a hat. I wear work gloves. I work in the soil. And it's important to protect yourself when you're out there anytime, but especially in the middle of the summer. You have to make a conscious effort. You need to make a conscious effort to drink plenty of fluids right now if you're out in the sun. And you need to avoid alcohol and avoid sugary drinks and things like that. It's really, really hard to beat water, just good old water. You need to, if you're using power equipment, it's important to wear safety goggles and hearing protection. And I'm taking some of this information from the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. They've got a real good fact sheet on garden safety, and I encourage you to take a look at that. But insect control, you know, chiggers and mosquitoes are very active this time of the year, and we got diseases out there that mosquitoes carry, so it's important to use insect repellent if you're going to be out, and that contain DEET. That's probably one of the best insect repellent out there, and be sure that you do that. Always keep in mind, put safety first, and in whatever you're doing. You know, many times in the garden we're dealing with tools that are sharp, hose, and I'm not talking about knee-high hose, it's a different kind of hose and shovels and pruning shears and things like that. Be careful when you're using them, be careful when you sharpen them, and many of them do need to be sharpened, and sharpened tools work better than dull ones, but be careful when you're doing all that. Let me see what I've got over here on page 2. Know your, going back to the heat, know the symptoms of being overheated.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If you feel dizzy, if you feel nauseated, if you have a headache or something like that, stop what you're doing and, you know, go to the shade or go to an air-conditioned area and cool down a little bit. That's pretty, if you work in a garden all the time out in the dirt, it's important to keep your tetanus shot up to date, because the tetanus organism lives in the soil, and if you cut yourself, you know, you can very easily contract that disease, so it's important to keep your tetanus vaccinations up to date.
Sure. Let me ask you about
I'll leave
this.
anything out?
Yeah, are ticks active?
What's
now?
that?
Ticks.
Ticks are.
Okay.
Ticks are very active right now, and they also carry some pretty bad diseases. The insect repellent with DEET will help repel those. Ticks, mosquitoes,
Yeah.
can be dangerous because of the diseases they carry. Chiggers can just worry the heck out of you. Now, if you have blackberries, and the blackberries are ripe now, or they're nearing the end of their production, and I guarantee you, I don't care whether you have tame blackberries or wild blackberries, if you pick them, you're going to get chiggers if you don't use insect repellent. And sometimes you'll get them even if you use them. But
Yeah, DEET is some good
I
stuff.
think one of the things that I always try to do is just go get a shower real quick and scrub real good right after you've been out in the
there.
thicket.
That's a good idea. But
Because that will get some of that stuff. Then you'll see if you got ticks and things. You can
check it out.
you can pluck them off.
Yeah, we've actually had a few agents. Kara Reed's been one of them. Got attacked by a tick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to be careful out
I've
there
had
as well.
tick fever as well. I sure have.
yeah.
And it took a long, long time for them to diagnose it because the symptoms were just so strange.
Right.
So
And that's,
it's not good. It's not.
really not.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Yeah.
And I guess something else to think about too, Mr. D. What about using ladders when folks are trying to prune and things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
That's why I try to keep my fruit trees less than 8 feet up. I'm not 6 feet tall. I'm 5'10", and I've got pruning shears that are 2 feet long, my loppers.
Right.
And so my fruit trees are just 2 inches short of 8 feet.
Right.
Because I'm not gonna work them from a ladder, and you just don't need to do that. If there's any way you can stop doing that now, with apples and peaches, plums, and nectarines, you can do that pretty easily. Pears are pretty hard to not let get taller than 8 feet. But I mean, and you got to be brutal with them. You gotta really do some serious pruning in the late winter.
Right. Wow.
But I just do not recommend working from a ladder.
Okay.
Yeah, just get a professional
Yes,
if it's
that's what I say.
above your head is
That's
what
right.
I usually tell people.
Right, yeah, it's not
Get
worth
you a
the
good
risk.
arborist or
Yes.
somebody who knows how to handle
Yeah.
chainsaws way up
That's
in a
right.
tree and that kind of stuff. So it's just too dangerous.
Another thing in the garden, many times we use pesticides, so be very careful that you follow and read the label directions of
That's a good
pesticides.
point, yeah.
It is.
Store them in areas where children can't get to them or pets can't get to them. Storing those pesticides. Make sure they stay in the container they came in. It's not a good idea to pour them up into a plain
Yeah.
container because, there's some pesticides out there that look like Kool-Aid, and that look like Gatorade,
Right.
and things like that. The pretty green pesticides. There's Gramoxone is a
Yeah,
really pretty
it
green
is.
color, and it's very toxic. And then Liberty is purple, and there's just a lot of real pretty colored pesticides out there. So leave them in the container that they came in, and store them, and keep them away from kids and pets also.
Yeah. How do you dispose of those pesticides?
Use them for a labeled use.
Okay.
If you have extra pesticides left over, talk to some of your gardening friends, find out if they need them.
Yeah.
And let them use them for a labeled purpose. The best way to dispose of a pesticide is to use it for its intended purpose.
True.
And that is by far the best way. I'd rather do that. Other than that, you'll have to go to landfills and some toxic waste landfills.
Right.
So use it for the purpose it was intended to be used for. Don't overbuy pesticides. They last a long time if you store them. On the label, it tells you how to store them. Try to keep them from freezing. Put them in a closed case, and you can store them, and you can use them for years and years. They last a long time. That's the best way to dispose of them.
All right, Mr. D, we appreciate that. Yeah, we want
Most welcome.
folks to be safe in the garden, no doubt. Now I'm about to show you what we call bacteria leaf spot. As you can tell from this leaf, look at all of the spots. This is how you can tell this bacteria leaf spot. If you look closely, you can see the yellow halos around the necrotic area, okay? And necrotic just means decaying tissue. But again, it's the yellow halos, which are pretty well pronounced. Necrotic centers, bacteria leaf spot. Usually see this anytime you have a lot of rainy weather. The spores are in the air. They land on, of course, this leaf. You have high humidity. Right behind that, you get bacterial leaf spot. To control bacterial leaf spot, of course, you can use a copper-based fungicide or you can use Daconil. Please read and follow the label. All right, this is our Q&A session. Y'all ready? This is gonna be fun.
Oh, yeah.
All right, here's our first viewer email. I have 5 pepper plants, and they are all tall but not producing any peppers. Is this common? And this is from Craig in Middleton, Tennessee. Mr. D, what do you think about that?
I may refer to.
Oh, you go to the next
Oh,
one?
I've got, yeah, all right, I know what's going
you
on
know
with
that
that.
one?
I
All
do.
right, let's go.
Because my peppers are doing the same
Okay.
thing. And I grow my peppers in pots so that I don't have to stoop down. I'm getting old, so I don't like to stoop down, so I grow my peppers up.
Okay.
But temperatures above, daytime temperatures
there it
above
goes.
90 degrees will cause blossom drop. And that, obviously, if you don't have blossoms, you're not going to have fruit.
Right.
And nighttime temperatures above 75 degrees will do the same thing. And obviously, we've
got
been
both of them.
having...
We've had that lately.
We've had some those kind of things happen. So don't despair if that's the problem. They will continue to flower, and when temperatures moderate, you know, you will get some fruit
You get
set.
fruit.
Yeah, and then of course they need 6 hours, at least 6 hours of full sun a day.
Okay.
You know, and then if you may have a deficiency of pollinators, you know, because these plants are pollinated by little insects and things. So, you know, you've got to have pollinators around, and if you think that might be a problem, you need to have more pollinator plants that attract those, like pretty
Right.
flowering things that will bring in the bees and the other pollinators.
Or you may have to help pollinate yourself.
Exactly, you
Might have
could
to
do that.
Because yeah, you know, temperatures above like 90, 95 makes the pollen less viable.
It sure does.
Right.
It does.
So it has to be stimulated within the flower. So you might have to do that yourself.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so that's what I think the problem is, Mr. Craig. So we
Yeah.
appreciate that question. Here's our next viewer email. Mr. D, I like this one. I planted a pecan in a pot in March. It is now 11 inches tall. When is a good time to put a pecan sapling in the ground, and how long do they take to mature? And this is Miss Jean in Covington. You're the pecan guy. You know about
Yeah,
that.
and if I were going to the trouble to plant a pecan tree,
Okay.
You wouldn't do it from a seed.
I would not do it from a seed, because even if you know what
Yeah.
tree that came from, that pecans are cross-pollinated. And so it's only half, that the mother tree is only half of what that pecan is. It might be from a little bitty small seedling tree
Right.
somewhere else, because they're wind pollinated, they are cross-pollinated. And you know, to answer your question, I would plant it in the fall, winter, late winter. But if I really wanted a good pecan tree, I would go to a pecan nursery or a lawn and garden
grafted
center
one.
and get a variety that
Yeah.
you want. And by the way, one pecan tree, unless you have others around, you must have another one
Yeah,
around,
yeah.
unless you bought this pecan and brought it in. But remember, I said it's cross-pollinated. And so we don't even know whether this one is a type 1 or a type 2 pecan, so you wouldn't know what kind of pollinator to get. You need 2 pecan trees, and one needs to be a type 1, one needs to be a type 2. And the only way you can figure that out is if you buy them that have a label hanging off
Yes.
of them. How long does it take them to produce? If you get some of the newer precocious varieties, you can probably be eating pecans in 6, 7 years, you know, 5, 6, 7 years. If this is off of an old Elliott or Stewart or something
yeah.
like
Right.
that, it could take 15
Yeah,
15
from a
years,
seedling.
you know,
Yeah, and
from
then
a
you don't know
seedling.
what you're getting.
It takes a long time, so I would look at it that way. I would, if you want to get pecans pretty quick, go on and buy you a couple, 3 or 4 that, and get at least one type 1 and you know, maybe a couple of type 1s and a couple of type 2s. And
All right, so there you have it, Miss Jean. Hope that helps you out. Here's our next viewer email. Can you please explain to us gardeners about these awful tomato hornworms? How and when do they come to be on our tomato plants? Do hornworms come out of the soil, or are they from eggs laid by a large moth? And this is Miss Hazel in Eads. It's actually a good question, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
do they come out of the soil or from eggs that are laid by
Right.
large moths?
yes,
Yes.
They do come
do.
from the moths. The hawk moth, or it's called a
And they
sphinx moth,
puke.
or hummingbird moth.
and they pupate in the soil.
Yeah.
So it's the sphinx moth.
Yeah,
They're sometimes called hummingbird moth. It's
Yeah.
a sphinx moth. It's a real pretty moth. The moth will lay an egg on a tomato plant, and it'll hatch, and it'll be a little bitty hornworm, and it gets bigger as the more it eats. And you can find them by looking for the droppings.
Right.
Is the easiest way to find them because they're so well camouflaged on a tomato plant. You know,
Look where the bare stems
That's what I
are.
bare
look for.
stems. That's where they've been.
leaves.
You know, that's where they've been.
Because they will just
But,
about defoliate a tomato
They
plant.
sure will.
Fortunately, a real good product to control them is BT. Bacillus thuringiensis does a real good job of controlling them. There's no waiting period. It's not harmful to humans. It's not harmful to beneficial insects, and you can put that out there and they'll take care of them. But they are from a moth. And after they finish, like this old boy right here that we got on the table, he's about done. You know, he's about as big as he's going to get. So he'll crawl off in the ground, fall down in the ground, and he'll pupate.
Okay.
And then next spring,
It'll be next week.
that's when, then I don't know whether they go,
the moths come out.
come out as a moth.
Okay. And here again are the dropping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kinda
Little
look for
worms
that.
have little
Little
droppings, big
droppings.
worms have big droppings.
Yeah, it's a big dropping. There's no doubt about that.
And that one is, by the way, a tobacco hornworm. The tomato hornworms have a V on them. I mean, you can
Okay,
tell the
yeah.
difference. The V is, wow, I could have had a V8. Just remember that for tomatoes. That one has just slashes on the
Yeah.
side, so that's a tobacco
Someone saw
hornworm.
that.
It doesn't have the V.
Okay.
Got the slashes.
All right, Ms. Hazel, there you have it. And Mr. D. All right, Mr. D, Dr. Kelly, thank you. We're out of time.
Yeah.
Come on.
Been fun.
Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. To get more information on any topics we talked about on today's show, go to familyplotgarden.com. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.